to Anthony Gillespie to give you an update on the actual Center for Advanced Air Mobility Initiative. Thanks, Anthony. Take it away.
Sure. Thank you, Howard here. Good morning, everyone. What I wanted to do is just spend a few moments just building out kind of the context of this effort, what it's about, what are we doing, what are we planning to accomplish, and just hopefully you as one of our attendees here can see a potential role on how you can either get directly involved or help us support this effort. So as Howard mentioned, this is an effort between Ohio Aerospace Institute and Manufacturing Works. This is an EDA, an Economic Development Administration grant. And really what they do is they're looking at supporting and helping companies really drive job development and job creation in respective regions. For our effort, as far as for the Center of Advanced Air Mobility, we are really focused on looking at how can we help existing businesses really drive and grow their companies in the advanced air mobility space. We have an emphasis towards businesses that are underrepresented in that space. But definitely what we're doing is we're working with businesses, and we're saying that we're doing an accelerator approach to really help facilitate small business growth and development. Next slide, please. So this slide really shows a number of initiatives under the Center of Advanced Air Mobility Initiative. We call it CAMI. And really there's 3 initiatives to it. As I mentioned before, we're targeting small to mid-sized businesses. And if you see on the right-hand side of that slide, when we speak of advanced air mobility, there's a number of industry sectors or companies that may be involved in existing industry sectors that can really play a role as we see as far as looking out into the advanced air mobility space. So if you're involved, for example, in the energy space, you may be creating components that can be used in advanced air mobility, aircraft and products. If you're involved in an advanced manufacturing area, there's going to need to be manufacturing development and different ways of manufacturing products in this emerging area. And so you could play a role. Aerospace, of course, given that, we're looking at these, really looking at aircraft and products and services in that industry. And so we see roles if you're already involved in that space or looking to get into that space. And then the computer and technology area, really orienting and seeing where, this advanced aircraft is moving towards the logistics side of things will play a role. And so really we're looking for companies who are all involved in that space. So if you have a business that are either directly involved or maybe complementing companies in that space, we're interested. So you may be curious as far as how can we, or what are we really accomplishing through our initiatives for this effort? And so we're working with businesses in 3 areas. One is in the area of companies, if you're small to mid-size, how can you grow your company more along the lines from a mergers and acquisition perspective? And there's a number of opportunities where you could work with us. We have a number of programs for companies who are interested in growing your business through a merger or acquisition opportunity. And that's really carried out through our educational initiatives. One is the Leadership Institute, and then secondly, then there's a growth and transition program as well. A second major area is really for companies that may be more involved as far as developing a technology, as far as a commercialization perspective. There's funding available through the Small Business Innovation Research Program or the Small Business Tech Transfer Program. And so we can introduce companies to that opportunity to potentially get funding to help source new product development and services. And then there's some state supported programs as well. The Ohio Federal Research Network, OFRN, is an opportunity. And so that's kind of our second bucket, besides kind of more educational initiatives to look at growth and development, through mergers and acquisition. And then the second area is commercialization initiatives as far as helping you identify, advisory resources and funding and support. The third area is really where we're going to get into today. And companies are really going to present some real life examples of how they're collaborated specifically the B2G space. So these companies are small businesses that have successfully navigated into the government space and really taken an idea, a product or service, and have successfully developed a partnership with the government and collaborated to help grow sales within their respective company or start setting that foundation for that type of relationship. And so that's one key area. Another area that we're looking at as far as supporting companies is more from a B2B perspective. And how can you work with maybe larger OEMs if you have a product or service to get into their supply chain? Next slide. So there's 3 phases to this project. We're into first phase as far as the outreach phase. We're reaching out, looking for candidates who would have an interest in this effort. We're going to drill down and move to the second stage as far as engagement, where there will be a number of candidates that we can closely work with through our CAMI program to really work in one of the 3 initiative areas to help them grow their companies. In other cases, there may not necessarily be a fit, but there's a lot of resources in the network, and we'll work with companies who actually reach out to us and contact us and show an interest to maybe there's other resources outside of our network, but within Northeast Ohio that can help them look at scale and grow. And so we'll provide that conduit, that open that door for them to connect. And then lastly, the third stage is really looking at implementation. For companies that are a fit and working with us through one of our initiatives, we'll develop an engagement plan on how we can work together to help meet a number of milestones as far as looking at growing and scaling. And so we plan on doing multiple rounds over the next 2 to 3 years as far as for the life of the project. But this is the overall kind of 3 phases. And so we're in round 1 here of going through those phases and at step 1 as well. Next slide. So this slide quickly here just shows some of the outcomes. I'm not going to go into the details here, but these are important as far as with respect to our grant. We're looking at a number of companies that we work with. We're hoping as far as to see some successful events as far as helping companies either raise capital if they're developing products and services. Grant awards is also another measurement that we have to look at to see our effectiveness. And then lastly, this partnership development piece. And like I said, today, really, that's what you're going to hear a lot from is a couple of examples of companies that are successfully navigating along that path, in particular, as far as, looking at how can they partner as a business and work with the federal government. Next slide. So here's a couple of points of contact if you have an interest as far as working with us with this program. And so I'm available, as well as Ken Patesy as well from Manufacturing Works, but our whole team as well. So I'm going to stop there at this point. If there's any questions, I'm assuming we can take a few questions here, but if not, we can move on with the program here.
Hi, Anthony, you froze, but there he goes. Anthony, you froze right at the very end. Why don't we continue on through the presentations, and then if people have questions, they can add those into the chat area. And then as we finish with our speakers, let's come back to the questions, and then we can address those as a team. I just want to acknowledge one other member of the Manufacturing Works team. That's Ron Clough. He is on, and he is also a great member for outreach as we move into the future. All right, so let's begin with our speaker lineup. The next person up is Michael Adam. Michael is the CEO of Adam Aerospace Corporation, a data integrity software provider for the aerospace industry. He is involved in teaching blockchain technology at Marquette University. He leads Aerox, a small business aerospace incubator, and he's also been involved in founding 2 other technology businesses. Michael, thanks for joining us today, and let me pass it over to you.
Thanks, I really appreciate it. Thank you, Ohio Aerospace Institute, Manufacturing Works, and the Center for Advanced Air Mobility for having me. I I'm super intrigued by the center. So Anthony, I will probably be hitting you up at some point. So again, I'm Michael Adam Aerospace Corporation. Simply, we use our blockchain-based software to protect critical data in aerospace, defense, and critical infrastructure. When critical infrastructure, I'm talking about the 16 sectors defined by Homeland Security. So a little bit about our story. In about 2017, when blockchain seemed to be like the hypiest hype in the country, I was an early researcher on the technology, and I kind of became the de facto Midwest expert in everything blockchain. So I was flying around the country and around the world, giving presentations and speaking about the technology and distributed ledgers. One of those conferences was Blockland in Cleveland, which was actually one of the bigger conferences I went to. So in all my talks about blockchain, it was, well, okay, where is it today? Where is it commercially? It's really only at that point just in cryptocurrency. How do we use this on a day-to-day basis in the corporate world? So that was a very intriguing question that we kept getting. So we decided to create our base software product called Chain Tracks, which basically can read any size data set, no matter how large, how small, how complex. Read it, assign it a cryptographic signature, and then place that signature on chain. We were blockchain agnostic, or we are, so we can place things on Ethereum or Hyperledger, but from our customers' demand, and mainly military demand, DoD demand, we've created our own private chain, which you have to be a consortium member of the chain to have access to the ledger. So we created the software, but we didn't really have a specific use case for it. When we created it, it was like, well, let's just create the software because we know at its core, blockchain is just a ledger. And the use case we came up in our head was, well, let's create the software to just make data immutable and make data instantaneously verifiable or auditable. So we joined an accelerator program, and Microsoft saw us pitch. Microsoft said, hey, this is pretty cool. We're going to give you $150,000 in Azure credits because we really want this on our platform. And we said, great. So then they introduced us to two of the world's largest aircraft engine manufacturers. And those manufacturers were really interested in, hey, can we use cryptographic signatures to sign engine sensor data? So we said, yeah, of course we can do that. And again, we were a young company, so everything was a little bit smoke and mirrors, right? So when you have your product and it's working in your testing internally, you know what it can do, but then going to a large engine manufacturer, you have to have faith in your technology that you can scale and do that, which we were able to do. So once we went down that path, we really were focused on aerospace and defense. So, because like I said, critical infrastructure, there's so many sectors, but we really were focusing on aerospace. So we were able to join another accelerator program, which was just an aerospace accelerator program. That accelerator program no longer exists, but that opened so many doors because that was really our education into all things aerospace, our connections to people, probably why I'm here today talking with you, of connections that I made in that program. And that really kind of opened the floodgates. But when we went through that program, like we didn't know what an SBIR was. We didn't know what STTR was. We had no idea what any of that stuff. So, I mean, we were really green. And there was a company in the cohort that kept getting all these big contracts. And we're like, how are they? This is awesome for them, but how are they doing this? Well, it turns out the founder was veteran and had a lot of contacts and kept getting these SBIR contracts, which led into much larger contracts. So that's where we kind of dipped our toe in that route. As you can see now, we have contracts with the United States Air Force, Space Force, and Air Guard. We just went down to Huntsville, Alabama to pitch Army this last week. I think that went very well. Just to kind of give you like another specific use case, our number one product is we use our software to do secure data loading on and off aircraft. So mission critical data, whether it's maps, charts, topography, right now, all that stuff is It's insane. If the aircraft is more than 10 years old, all that stuff is not secure at all. Anybody can go and hack maps, charts, topography. So we use our software to create those cryptographic signatures and then create bounce points to check that nobody is messing with it. And that all goes on our private chain. So one of the things kind of I want to talk to, besides for our contracts, is our connections and how we got there. So our company, we're a sponge. Like we will take advice, we will take meetings with anyone we want to learn, because we know that you all probably know more than a lot of the stuff we know, and there's people much smarter out there than us. So we have partnered with universities, we've partnered with local economic groups, we've partnered with like energy consortiums, we've partnered with the Defense Alliance in Minnesota, all these groups that have assets and have opportunities. We love to partner. So that's really how we built our company, is by creating these relationships. So 2 examples. One, we've partnered with a small business who is a drone manufacturer, and they said, hey, Michael, we manufacture the drones, we sell to the government. You guys have your blockchain technology software. We want to incorporate that into what we do. We said, sure, great, let's work on it. So, without anybody charging anyone a penny, we sat down, we went to the whiteboard, and we drew up how we could work together, and it's successful. That was a small business. Now, on the other side, we recently just partnered with one of the world's largest avionics OEMs, which you would think, like, why would an OEM partner with a small company instead of acquiring them? Well, 1, because we don't want to get acquired yet because they're growing. But 2, they make hardware and we make the software, and they knew that our software will make their hardware better and be a very attractive sales piece for them. So we've now partnered with one of the largest OEMs in avionics. So that's, I'm just trying to say that our success has directly been correlated to our willingness to work with others and partners with others and let people use our technology to better their technology. And then we all win on the back end when those products get sold. You know, the next slide. So if we don't do enough already, a year ago, we said, hey, you know what, we're doing well. We're really reaping the benefits from what others have taught us. That aerospace accelerator that we went through lost its funding. So my colleague Elizabeth Thielen and I created Aerox, which is aerospace and defense and critical infrastructure accelerator program, where we really walk through how to become a defense contractor, how to get funded by the DoD or the Fed, and then how to apply for a SBIR phase 1. And typically we do the Air Force Open Topics one. This accelerator is an 8 weeks program. It's a non-dilutive program. It's really niche to companies like yours that say, hey, you know, we want to go a little bit further in defense. How do we get there? Some companies are already gone down that path and they need a little bit more help. Some have no idea, but they want to get into defense contracting, so they come through the program. We started our first cohort at 5 members. That went through 2 of us. 2 of them got SBR phase 1s. And this year we have 9 companies in our cohort, so we'll see how that goes, but I'm super impressed by them. There are a few vertical lift companies and urban air mobility companies in there. They're doing really interesting things. But yeah, Aerox is really about, you know, how can we kind of pay it forward to help other companies kind of get to where we've gotten. That being said, again, our willingness to partner with people, we partnered with our own cohort members. If they've come to us and said, hey, we have this machine learning tool, we want to use the data that you assign cryptographic signatures with to do some ML, to do like mean time to fail analytics or something like that. We've partnered with them as well. So next slide, please. So that was a lot about us, and I look forward to learning more about you. I'll probably be able to do that question and answer, but feel free to reach out to me anytime. My email is right there. So what are we looking for? We're looking to partner as well, right? So if any of your companies on there say, hey, we think what you're doing is cool, there might be a use case application of what we're doing, reach out. I love to talk. You know, Center of Advanced Air Mobility, if you guys have any questions or any ways you want to partner together, reach out. Same with Ohio Aerospace and Manufacturing Works. We actually have I don't know what your airspace is like in Ohio, but we have a really unique piece of airspace over Lake Michigan where you can fly over 10,000 feet. And we love to do vertical lift testing. We're really involved with that there as well. So yeah, reach out to us. We always are looking for partners. We're looking for experts. We're looking for supporters. So please feel free. We love to talk to new people.
Michael, thank you very much. We're going to come back to questions at the end, and just in my mind, and just want to keep this at the top of your mind too when we come back. Anytime there's a partnership involved, there's always a process to that partnership, from the first level of communication to the kind of advancing the relationship through follow-up. So I've just, as we get through this at the end, maybe you could just come back to that and talk about that a little bit, because that's the most important thing, especially when you're trying to get to either something that you're trying to drive revenue or trying to do new business development. But I think that's important for people to keep in the back of their minds.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, small business. Yep.
Yeah, no, thanks again. We're gonna come back to that. Okay, I just want to make sure that I have, is it Bahman Tahiri? I have you on board.
You do. I'm gonna turn on my video now.
Bahman, thank you very much. Good to see you, sir.
Good to see you. Thank you very
All
much.
right. Let me introduce you, and then I'll turn the space over to you. Bahman Tahiri is the CEO and founder of Alpha Micron. They are located in Kent, Ohio, and the company utilizes liquid crystal technology to create innovative products, including military goggles, eyewear, automotive displays, and a variety of other uses. Bahman is also an adjunct professor at Kent State University and holds a PhD from Oklahoma State University. Let me turn it over to one of the smarter guys that we'll be hanging out with today. Bahman, it's all yours.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for the invitation and being able to present in this thing. So I thought what I'd do is just I'll go quickly over what we did in our company, and hopefully that will give a brief overview of what can be done. It turns out that the SPR STTR has played a significant role in it, and I'll come back and answer questions where it is. But I thought just generally going through it will help understand what it can do as a platform in there. So jumping into the history of the company, the notion was that Wright-Patterson Air Force Base has been working on liquid crystal research for many, many years. They have a lot of expertise. And one of the problems that they had, and they've had it for the past 30 years, is to worry about light management in a helmet-mounted display system. So once you have a display, then of course, if you go above and below the clouds, the amount of sun is different. And these are augmented reality type of systems, and therefore you need a way to control the ambient light. And they were trying to sort this out with a number of different approaches, but it hadn't worked. So they approached the university and they wanted to see if that's something that we could do, and they proposed running through an SBIR. So we set up a company to address that, and our solution was to use liquid crystals to create an electronic tint-on-demand technology based on guest host displays. Can you go to the next slide? So what we did is, just to give you a feel for it, is the Liquid Crystal Institute. It is very well known. It is where your usual LCDs that you see and you're using your laptops, it was actually invented there, and also these privacy windows invented. There's a lot of technology there. So it has the largest university-based liquid crystal research program in the world, and it was the leader in the liquid crystal. It is the leader in the liquid crystal research in the U.S. certainly. And at the time when we were doing this, it was the hub for National Science Foundation's Advanced Liquid Crystal and Optical Material. So we were faculties at the Liquid Crystal Institute, and so we, in order to do this, though, they wanted it outside of the university environment because they wanted a product to come out of it. So we went through an SBIR type of system, but in order to do that, we had to create the company, and the SBIR has this great thing that you don't need to have everything all established for you to actually start it. So that's what we did. If you can go to the next slide. What we did is we rented a automotive garage, and you can see it was just a car garage. We built that table, and we became partners with the university because they had an industrial partnership program, and then we got help from SPDC and KRB Air and other institutions within the state, because we didn't know anything about even health insurance, taxes, and everything like that. So we were putting all of that system together, and we submitted a proposal which got funded for our solution to that particular problem. If we could go to the next slide. So we used that to create, you see the picture on the left, we created a film. It's a plastic based flexible material that you can apply a voltage to, and it changes its color based on liquid crystals, and with the solar power. So it's a low power consumption material, but it allowed us, more importantly, to renovate that car garage, if you wish, and start building some capabilities. That's one of these modular clean rooms, and we painted the floor, and we were able to kind of create a system. And the system, we demonstrated that it was viable, so we moved on to the next generation, and we submitted a phase 2 SBIR. If you can go to the next one. And there, it was a much bigger effect. It was and a bigger funding associated with it. So they gave us $750,000. This is 20 years ago, so I think the number is now bigger. And we were able to create a goggle based format. And this was the first time anybody had made a goggle in that format with liquid crystals. But the other part of it is that we were able to create and expand our facility. So now the modular clean room doubled in size. We created a little bit of a chemistry lab for us to be able to make our own dyes and create it. So moving on to the next slide, please. So we created basically a technology, and this technology is based on putting dyes inside of liquid crystal cells. Now, for liquid crystals to understand what they are, the simplest way to look at them is that these are materials that flow like a liquid, but they point. Each one knows where the other one is, like a solid. So it's like matches in a matchbox. You don't know where they are, but you know they're basically pointing one way. And we add a dye to it, and then this dye aligns itself with the other molecules. And then by applying a voltage, you can reorient the molecules into a shape. And that means you reorient the dyes. And if you do that, so you've created a molecular version of a Venetian blind, if you wish. And then depending on the dyes that you put in, you can get the colors that you want, and you can then start looking at creating these more of on a roll-to-roll basis, which is what we ended up doing. The advantage of this technology is that then we realized with this one system, which had an end customer funded by the government, for a need for the government. And we realized that this can now be expanded into other commercial sectors that are need the similar type of issues. If you go to the next slide, please, you'll see that the system, and it's becoming more prominent nowadays, but you need it for eyewear, whether it's soldiers going in and out of a building, they're going to need an instantaneous light management to their eyewear. The usual augmented reality, whether the new versions of these eyewear that's coming out other than the Google Glass. Microsoft has their own, and others are coming in, head-mounted displays. But more than that, you can go and more technologies are now being implemented in a sunroof of a car, because now the electric cars are all glass. You want to make sure it doesn't overheat, or even the head-up displays in a car where the image is portrayed on a windshield, all the way to large areas like architectural windows and skylights, where you want a dynamic way to control light entering the building because of energy savings and privacy, so you're not overheating and stuff like that. So we use this, and we went to the business strategy. Next slide, please. And basically, when we invented the platform, we looked for, we played this thing of looking for both military and commercial and pushing one against the other and being able to kind of create it. So we went to the consumer market, and we created goggles and sunglasses associated with it. And then we used that to validate it for the military and then grow to the other businesses. Move to the next slide, please. So the first product that we created were these pair of glasses. These are ballistic, so they could the soldiers could wear them, but also professional athletes could use them. And it would switch the tint either automatically, electronically, so it would take less than 1/10 of a second for it to switch, or you can have it manually, where with a click of the button does it with a battery, and then the battery will last about a week before you even need to charge it. And then this particular product ended up being on both the military. The Army has now adopted it and is in their authorized protective eyewear list, so the soldiers can access it and get it, and it meets the mil-spec 324-328 for protective eyewear, but also it meets the commercial side of it, which is the ANSI Z87.1, Z80.3, in terms of being able to be as a protective eyewear. So we kind of created that, and that became our entree into the commercial sector and manufacturing. And that allowed us these things to go on to the next slide, if you wish, please, to expand our capabilities and create a slew of capabilities, including processing and design. We were able to design our systems, make manufacturing of these films, then characterize it, and actually create next generation of materials. If you can go to the next slide, these are that we've kind of expanded from that little car garage to a bigger facility. We have about 30,000 square feet of facility now, with class 1,000 clean rooms and 3D printing facility, our own electronics lab, a full set of synthetic chemistry lab, and of course manufacturing and quality control. We're ISO 9001:2015 compliant and being audited by the Army, and all of our accounts can be audited. So that lends enormous amount of credibility to the company and our technology. And based on that, if you go to the next slide, please, we were able to now create a platform technology that could start looking at the other products into the other sectors of the market. So the eyewear product, which is ours, that moves forward, but we were looking at displays, whether it's augmented reality for near eye application, or whether it's automotive, to larger windows and systems that are good for transportations, and all the way to the energy sector for the windows. If you go to the next slide, please. And for each of those, it also gave us the capability not to just get fixed to one system of collaborations. So we have licensing agreements for some of those applications where the product is, let's say, for automotive, and the cost is low, the large numbers, and there's a tier system that is really not suited for a company of about 40 people, which is what we are now. But also we created some other alliances where we provide some materials, and then they can actually create some of these processes, and then we work with them on the engineering and product development. And then also on top of all of those, we still have our own brand, which is the Control and the Kari and eTint, which are primarily supporting the government in terms of the Army, and the Air Force. We have some projects which are more intense light protection rather than just the sunlight protection. So we are able to address all three of these potential approaches to interactions with other sectors. So if you can go to the next slide, please. So we've already interacted with a number of companies in these sectors, and some of those you can see that the importance of these particular projects in these applications is becoming more and more relevant as time is going by. All these companies are now looking at having electronic tint on demand technologies which allows them to either protect the amount of light that comes into a closed environment, or allows them to be compatible and have see-through displays, see-through projectors and stuff like that, which definitely need a way for you to control the background light so you can see the display. Now, a lot of these things, as we move forward, we've worked quite a lot with a number of the government support that involves within the state. We've worked with SPDC and entities that work both with the government. I mean, we work quite a lot with Rich Felicio that really helped us a lot of navigate a lot of DCAA, DCMA type of interactions. We've had interactions with SPDCs that helped us secure funding from SBA, so that allows a small company to go forward where banks may at the beginning may not want to be involved and it's too risky for them. And they were able to allow and actually help us find and interact with banks, because once your SBA is involved, then obviously your interactions are different because the bank feels protected, and therefore there is some level of easiness of dealing with them. We're working with Huntington Bank, and that helped us out a lot in terms of being able to not only just that, but if these other opportunities come where the government was working to help the small business, it was there. So these entities have been really important. But I think overall, the bottom line though, these SBIR and STTRs have been the main thing. They open up the gate because they allow you the funding to come in without it actually does two things: without the government taking control of the entity, but more importantly, it gives you an endpoint. It tells you, if you build this, we will get it. And that ability to know what the market actually needs, and if you are able to create that the market would adopt it, that has a lot of value. And it eliminates this notion of having to sell your idea because you think you came up with this, so it's great, but it's not that, but it's more to do with the fact that the government says this is needed, and we're putting in funding, enough funding to get you started. And once you're there, and if your technology is viable with a little bit of elbow grease, then you can kind of move it forward. So in our particular system, we did not go for any outside funding external to the government, and most of these things have been done internal with our funds. I always end with this slide because I love it. If you can go to the next one, and that's what Abraham Lincoln said, and that's basically the best way to predict the future is to create it. And I think definitely SBIRs and STTRs are an amazing program that allows entities to kind of explore this. That's it.
Do we create space here? Yes. Baman, thank you very much. That was a fantastic presentation. And I mean, the one thing that really, connects with me, and I think it's so important that as companies start along this process, is you found a need. You found a need from a defense or military perspective. You designed through your expertise, the solution by collaborating with partners, and then you were able to move that solution into just a commercial next generation kind of industry, global industry approach. And I think that's so important. But again, there's a process that goes through it. and you just seem to follow the process just so succinctly. So congratulations on all that. So I want to open it up. Thank you for everybody for the presentations. I want to open it up. We've got quite a few people on board. If there's questions that you'd like to address, I'm going to shoot some over to Michael first, because I know he's got to jump off the line with us. If you want to drop something in the chat, go ahead and do that right now. And while you're doing that, I want to start with Michael. You know, just like what we talked about before, you created I think a relationship process first, and then you went out and you built that into kind of a dynamic business development / revenue opportunity, and maybe just give us a little, you know, idea on how you did that and what that took with you and your team.
Yeah, so I mean, our path to growth was several paths. So we did receive SBIR funding. So that was kind of our first tranche of funding. We did not receive any other investment. We didn't seek it, right? So we always, if you can, we always say the best way to be funded is customer funded. So we have been fortunate to be funded by our customers. But a lot of that has to do with the partnerships that we created. So I know you, Howard, you mentioned, you know, different types of partnerships. So, you know, sometimes when we partner with small businesses, at first it was as simple as a handshake agreement, right? So we'll let you use our technology and you cut us in on, you know, this type of revenue share, so on and so forth. Now, when we partnered, our newest partnership with a large OEM, that is a much more rigorous type of partnership with a lot of lawyers and a lot of attorneys, and things are very set. But, you know, that's just the things you have to do when you're making those types of partnerships. And, you know, we get to the point now where we're kind of known as the expert in what we do and the leader in what we do. So we also are engaged a lot from universities or prime contractors that are going after larger federal dollars or larger commercial dollars, and they say, hey, will you be a sub on this application or this RFP? And we're always happy to work with them. It's kind of, you know, it's a little bit of madness because there's so many, the Fed is so large and there's so many opportunities, and there's, you know, you have a lot of prime contractors and you have so many subcontractors, small guys out there like us. So navigating the waters can feel a little daunting at some point, but, you know, my advice is just to strategically dive in, right? At first, it's kind of, you just like throwing darts at the wall. Okay, university wants me to do this. A prime wants me to do this. I have maybe an SBR opportunity here. This local regional group wants me to help there. And, you know, what we found is, you know, jump into as many pools as you can when you have the bandwidth, and just learn and partner and grow. And then the madness kind of makes sense, right? And then you have people in your corner and you have connections. For example, one of our connections in Minnesota said, hey, do you have any interest in being in Bold Quest this year? And I said, I don't know what Bold Quest is. He's like, really? It's the Super Bowl of military innovation. It is put on by the Joint Chiefs and 16 allied nations. Like, I felt like an idiot for not knowing what Bold Quest was. But then 2 days later, we're presenting to 300 people around the world. And now we're one of the companies featured in Bold Quest. So we went from not even know what it was, to the people that we partner with having our back. And that's really how we like to do business, right? I mean, we want to help out the people that help us. So.
That's great. I think 27 people just wrote down Bold Quest in their notes. So I think that was, a great note to bring up. Thanks.
I think next year's in New Zealand. So
is that right? I think people just scratched Bold Quest off their list.
Hey,
There
Howard,
better be some extra.
Yeah, and Howard, before you jump to the next question, I think Michael, and I want to emphasize this to a lot of our attendees who have businesses and have an interest in getting involved as far as the government sector. In both cases with Bauman and Michael, they started off with attending events and marketing to the government. And so that's an easy way to start off. Find those events that are applicable to your respective sector, get out there and do some face-to-face marketing, or take advantage of those programs that are available where you can feature what you do. that's always a good starting point if you're not sure where to start off with.
Yep, absolutely. And then when you're marketing to people, just take advantage and don't be afraid to like look silly. I mean, when I look back on like, somebody's like, do you have a capability statement when we first started? And I was like, I can create one. So I just put words on a piece of paper and said, here's what we do. And then I saw examples of real capability statements. Like, wow, I was way off. Theirs are pretty and they make sense. And there's pictures. So, I mean, we started from basically not knowing anything and just failing on our own or embarrassing ourselves. When I look at our first SBIR pitch decks, oh my, they were terrible. And now we got it down to a science where if a topic came up tomorrow, we could knock out a deck in an hour. I mean, it's really, we went from not knowing anything to somewhat of a chaotic, well-oiled machine.
And maybe you could just take that a step further, then maybe I jump over to Bauman with what you just said there. So you mentioned capability statement. Why don't you just give us, I mean, because that's something that a lot of people may know about, may not know about, but tell us how you did it, what you used it for, and then let's jump over to Bauman and see what worked for them.
Two most important pieces of marketing material that we have are capability statements and our quad chart. So our capability statement is a one-sheeter basically, and it says who we are. It's got our cage code right up at the top. So if you're not registered on sam.gov, you don't have a cage, I encourage you to get it because you really can't sell to the Fed without it. And then it's got, kind of pictures of our software. It describes what we do. It outlines our core blockchain software. It outlines our private blockchain network and outlines some key projects that we've worked on or that we are working on. So it outlines like some Air Force projects, some Space Force projects, but it's really just like a brag sheet of who you are, what you're doing. And then once you have that, you can kind of tailor it to your audience, right? So, we can tailor it to, we say we're in critical infrastructure, but our main one is really military related, but we could, if we wanted to, we could change it to being like nuclear reactor data. You just got to, you switch it up. And as far as the quad chart goes, I'm sure you might have seen them. It's just a square with 4 quads in it. And it really outlines, that one is more technical, right? So if you have a piece of hardware, it gives the specs, it gives the weight, it gives the measurements. If you have software, it might give the speed, it might give, is the cloud accessible? So the quad chart is just a little bit more technical than the capability statement. But again, we come to realize that anytime we're talking to somebody new in military or in the Fed, they're like, send us your quad chart, send us your quad chart, send us your quad chart. And sometimes it changes, right? So if it's like for this bold quest, they'll give you a template, like here's a quad chart we want you to fill out. So then you just follow their format. Or if you're familiar with like the Vulcan system, which is like an Army innovation website, there's like calls for innovation and stuff. They'll provide you with like quad chart templates. So that was long-winded, but capability statements and quad charts are our best friends.
No, I think that's very, very appropriate because just like you said, those are the ways that you open doors and get responses. And Bauman, I mean, is there an approach you took on with just a marketing or a direct kind of flyer that you use? I mean, I think we saw some of it, but just what would you say?
So ours was a little bit different than Michael's in the approach that because this need was there, we focused on that need and actually the government both on I looked at our first SBIR. It was just horrible because they had all these commercialization and we had nothing in that category at all. But I think the point here is that the government, especially the people working with SBIR, STTR, and all of these people working with small businesses are aware and they understand that. And they understand that you don't know all of those and they guide you through it, whether it's the contracts or whatever. And again, the resources that are out there for SBDCs, and again on ours was rich in terms of the contract negotiations, and you realize, oh my gosh, these at the beginning, you're overwhelmed with all the DFARs that are coming in, and you're just signing it. You don't know what that means, hoping that everything's going to be okay. But then later on, you realize all of the other aspects of it with the contractor and all this stuff that falls into it. I think ours was a little bit different path. So we were in some ways lucky because the government wanted this particular need, and we really were focusing on that one, and we had our system there. So as the need expanded to the different agencies, we were already there. So the quad charts played a big role, but the marketing was the reverse a little bit. So that helped us. But we did that for the consumer side. We had to go out there and really demonstrate to them that initially that this technology is something that they needed. And the presence of government played a big role in that, because if a soldier needs it, if a warfighter needs it, then clearly a professional athlete would need it sooner or later. So those where the function wins over the form, that's where your real true capabilities comes in dealing with government.
And then just go ahead, Mike.
I'll say, yeah, you bring up a great point. I mean, ours was completely opposite, where our education curve, what we created was like half of our sales process is teaching people what blockchain technology even is and how it can help them, and why it's far superior than just using servers they have located on base somewhere. So, I mean, a lot of our marketing material, we have to spell it very, very clearly, like why you benefit from this, why this is far superior, because a lot of people see it and they're like, what are you talking about? So that's one thing we fight. And the other thing we fight a lot, which is good, but there's basically unlimited use cases for our technology. So like right now we focus on secure data loading in aircraft, but at any data set that could get corrupted or stolen or changed, whether it's like fire or like weapons data, or I mean, anything. I mean, it's a good problem to have, but that's also, we have to navigate very carefully where we want to implement our technology and not spread ourselves too thin. So
again, so you touched on a really nice point, and between the both of you, how, Michael, from your perspective, how did you direct that navigation? Is that part of what you did with your team? Did you seek outside support with that? I mean, how did you create that flow?
Something we did internally, and we really we have a couple pillars we focus on. We focus on like university help, like university connections. We focus on prime contractor connections, and then we focus on small business connections. And then our fourth pillar we focus on is like support group connections. So like, you know, Ohio Aerospace Institute would be a support group, or manufacturing. So we build relations in those four pillars, and then we try to get them to be like in our corner. And what can we do to help you? What projects are you working on? Hey, universities, if you have any grants you're writing and you need help, or you want to have us work in somehow, we'll do it. I think last year we were part of 10 grants with 10 different universities, just because they liked what we were doing. Prime contractor connections. I mean, it might be, I might go to, so we are a very close relationship with a company called Defense Alliance in Minnesota. So I might go to my contact at Defense Alliance. I'm like, hey, who do you know? We're in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So I'm gonna say, who do you know up north in Oshkosh at Fincantieri Marionette Marine? They just got a huge destroyer contract. Because I don't know anybody at Marionette Marine, but I know somebody at my contacts at Defense Alliance knows people at Marionette Marine. So we just use those connections, and we're not afraid to ask. The one piece of advice I will learn is, like, when you're younger and starting out, you're super anxious and you want to get these contacts, you want to get these connections. Well, sometimes you get these connections and you have these conversations and you don't know, and you're not ready to yet. I mean, you get this like gold nugget and be like, hey, we're gonna set up a conversation between you and the president of Gulfstream, and you're like, yes. But then after the conversation, you're like, man, I probably should have waited until I knew a little bit more about, this and that. So when you, like I said, don't be afraid to approach prime contractors or connections, but make sure you have all your ducks in a row before you do. Because we've made that mistake too, where we've just met people and we walked out and we were like, man, they must have thought we were a bunch of jokers. Like, and then compared to now where we know what they're looking for, we know what they want, we know how this goes. It's all trial and error and you can't be afraid to fail. And if you have a sense like, man, we really messed that one up, so what? I mean, the Fed is so big, there's so many people out there, you'll make more connections.
Yeah, I think that's true, but I think you've also, just as you moved forward, you've created that support network around you, because the last thing you want to do is get in front of the CEO of Gulfstream and and forget what your capabilities actually are. So yeah, no doubt about it. Bauman, let me. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. And it's not even forgetting your capabilities, understanding what they require. Like,
there you go.
That's a lot of time like, oh, we need this security clearance to even talk with you, and that's going to take us 3 years to get. Okay, well, then we'll have this conversation in 3 years. Sorry for wasting your time.
Yeah, that's great. And so a couple of questions came in. I want to ask Bauman that same question, but everybody needs, okay, there it is. It's a cage code that you need to be actively involved with selling to the government. OAI and Manufacturing Works can both help you with understanding that process through that, so we can address that further if you'd like. And Bauman, then just maybe a little bit detail about how you've progressed and navigated, especially when you could spread yourself easily across industry areas of expertise.
Yeah, so on our side, what we really focused on was what our capabilities are and what we could create value into it. And the value that we felt that we could do was in the near-eye application. Of course, the augmented reality and head-mounted display in terms of the Air Force is by far the hardest, but we quickly ended up moving toward protecting against intense light. Intense light turned out to be a big issue, whether it's a laser or other forms of threats that are coming into the warfighter. I think the couple of things that really helped us a lot were obviously finding the right champion in the government itself too. So we didn't just submit proposals to a lot of different branches. Ours was much more targeted. We found the entities, both in the Air Force and the Navy and the Army, that we're working with all three, who had direct interaction with the warfighter, with the end user. And we did HFEs. We would literally make the parts and we would send it to them, and they would run their human factor evaluation, and they would come back and say, yeah, the button is no good, this is not good. And we went back and forth. And that process was very extensive, to the point that it wasn't, and we always say, it's not just our product, it's their product too, so that there's a true sense of ownership, because they do want to create a product and one has to realize that the people on the other side, typically the ones that we're talking to, they are there to provide a technology or a piece of equipment to the soldiers, to the warfighter. So they are really heavily invested in that system, and we are supporting that investment. And so in that sense, it makes a huge difference, because we now have a partner in the government, not a customer in the government. And we work through that. So if they would come back and they would say, okay, this is good, but now we have a problem with lasers, then we would be able to pivot, and we would pivot into the direction which is not our expertise, but to support that customer.
So it's so important, just some of the things that you've talked about, especially finding that application and that champion within that sector, because as Michael referenced, it's a very, very large sector. So I think that's of particular importance, is finding that champion that can help move process product forward for you, and find that value and application that really makes sense. There's no doubt about it. Someone else posted in that becoming a good way to get started is being a supplier for a company that is already part of the DoD. Michael Baumann, while you're on, is how do you feel about that? Do you partner with somebody and hope your product moves in that direction? Well, what do you think?
For us, yes. So since we create software, we look for other companies that are already selling to the DoD, and then we say, hey, we think our software would benefit, or the addition of our software would benefit what you're already selling. It gives a level of security to it, data security and transparency to what you're already doing. So 100%, if you can find those partnership opportunities, whether you're a partner or you're a subcontractor, I mean, they're two different things, but they're both either way, you're working with somebody who's already doing it. So 100%, we recommend it.
Great, thanks. Baumann, your take on that?
Well, so on our side, we do two different things. I mean, we do work with primes a lot because they have their hands on the pulse of what the government truly needs, and that they also take care of quite a bit of administrative stuff, which are complicated for a small company to do because the rules are written for everybody. So the rules are written for Lockheed Martin as well as Alpha Micron. So, and Lockheed Martin clearly has people who are contractors and accountants and technology people. And in our company, we have the same guy do everything. So it does definitely reduce the complexity when you work with a tier 1 supplier or with a government contractor. However, that said, there's a lot of times that we can't do it because what happens is the value chain becomes important. Now, we tried to work with some of the companies that were providing spectacles to the government, but spectacle is just a piece of plastic and anyone can make it. So for us to put the technology into their hand, it didn't make sense. We're creating all these electronics and everything associated with it, but they are working with the government, it's true, but they're injected molded piece of plastic. So we ended up having to sometimes reverse the role just because the value add was placed in a different location than that one. So value add is going to play a big role on our position into that chain.
So very important to find the right emphasis and to create that value like you guys have been talking about. Just Anthony, anything you wanted to add, maybe just in terms of people can connect with you on this, we can relay information back to Michael and others. Is you want to just slowly start to close this up?
Yeah, only thing I would say, I can, I provided a slide with my contact information. We will follow up with registrants and attendees of this event to share the slide information. We'll talk to our presenters to make sure it's okay to share their information as well. And then if you have any follow-up questions, we can coordinate. Like I said, really that's what this whole initiative is about as far as the Center of Advanced Air Mobility. We realize there are a lot of resources available that can really provide a pathway to help you grow your company. And so we want to serve as that connecting point to help you out. Unlike Baumann and Michael, where they learned through some experience, we're hoping to accelerate that pathway for you. That's the idea of having a virtual accelerator effort.
And I think that's a great point, Anthony. And this is the first in a series of opportunities that we're going to be presenting. We just wanted to start off with some fantastic experts to kick it off. And since we had to do it virtually, we figured this would be just a good way to get everybody kind of pumped up and ready to go, because we'll do these in person from now on.
If I could just say something to the small businesses out there, like congrats, you're already way ahead of where a lot of people are. Like the fact that you're on this call, the fact that you're engaging with these people is awesome. So congrats to you. It's not an easy process, so stick with it. I mean, you're going to fail, keep failing, keep trying. And my other tidbit is, if you have the opportunity to apply to, I hope they'll release it this year, but if you have the opportunity to apply to the AFWorks Open Topic SBIR, do it, because that's your area to dream, right? I mean, you can, any idea, you can submit it. So if you have the bandwidth and the time, take the chance and apply to that AFWERX open topics, because no matter what your technology is, they'll look at it. We have an accepted contract right now, or phase one, and we met some of the cohort members. There's people with like fitness apps and nutrition planning. So, I mean, it's all over the board for that open topics. But again, congrats, you guys are on the right path. Don't be afraid to fail, and don't be afraid to ask for help, because people want help.
Good
point. Bauman, any closing remarks from your side?
Well, no, I'm not sure I'm qualified to give a lot of a lot of talk on business, because I'm more of a technical person. But I do believe that at the end of the day, small businesses have a strong opportunity and a strong chance of succeeding, because they have that internal love put into it. But again, and I would re-emphasize that there are a lot of resources in the state, and I think tapping into those resources is really, really key here, because they would allow you to really address where you can fit with the government, with the as well as all the infrastructure that you need. And I strongly recommend people do address and actually try to approach those, because those resources are going to end up being key. You won't be able to solve all the problems. You may be able to solve all the technical problems, but there's a lot of administrative stuff that you also need to solve.
Yeah, great.
Howard, one last thing I wanted to say to the small businesses. You're in a good place because you're innovating, right? So, you know, the Abraham Lincoln quote that Bahama put up, create the future self, because the big companies aren't doing it anymore. No, the large OEMs, their R&D is you. They want you guys to create it, and then they want to acquire you. So, I mean, very rarely are the Boeings really innovating, or like what I like to call now the law offices of Raytheon, Collins, and UTC. They're not. I mean, they're looking for you guys to innovate. So you're on a good path.
Great. Thank you very much for those. Thanks both Michael and Bauman. Those were just some great overall presentations, and also just some great suggestions and ideas. I just want to thank everybody that was part of the program today. Special thanks to our hosts, the Ohio Aerospace Institute and Manufacturing Works. We'll see more of these great events in the future. And as of now, we are at that time where I am going to close the program and end the recording, and we will speak with all of you very soon. Thank you very much for attending today. It was an exciting gathering.